I am so honored today to interview my next guest. What a perfect way to end 2020 by interviewing my eldest daughter, Sabrina Gibson. What I'll be talking to you about is her views on how a parent's childhood beliefs affect the way we parent. I don't think we realize that our belief system affects the way we raise our children. So at 24, let's hear about Sabrina's perceptions on how my childhood beliefs, her dad's childhood beliefs affected the way we raised you.
I mean, I think because you and Dad just had very different upbringings, I think there was a lot of clashing in perspectives on how to raise me and Chelsea. So I think it was interesting seeing just how different you guys were trying to your approaches in parenting. I think were very different.
Was it challenging or conflicting
Oh,
because
totally,
we had?
yeah.
So can you, not to
I
put you on the
think
spot, but maybe like an example?
I think the first thing that comes to mind was like the religious beliefs because Dad was raised in like the Christian environment. Then we went to a Christian school, but then you were more like, I mean, Grandma was Buddhist and Papa was Catholic, so I think you just kind of chose your own religious route, I think more spiritual than anything. So I think it was really interesting and kind of conflicting, I guess, for Chelsea and me to, I think, see one parent more like, I don't know, not really identified to a religion, and then one parent, I think, having been raised in like the Christian church. And then I think that led us to, I guess in a good way, really have to just navigate what our own spiritual beliefs were.
So, did that affect maybe discipline or life lessons? I know as an educator, I tend to make everything into a life lesson,
Yeah.
which I'm frequently reminded of. But how do you think that influenced your childhood? Having a teacher slash mom giving you workbooks or really
I mean,
stressing the importance of maybe a little bit too much academic
yeah.
emphasis?
I think I can only speak from my experience, so I don't really know how Chelsea was, but I think I just remember from a really young age always wanting to make you happy. So if I knew I could make you happy by doing workbooks on like Christmas Eve
Or her birthday? Or at Disneyland?
then I would do them. I think I was a very obedient child for the most part.
So do you think being a people pleaser, though, is something that children, how does that affect their upbringing? Because I think I would have parented differently,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you influence or how do you raise someone, total different daughters, right? One people pleasing, the other one not really focused on, I need to please my mom or dad. Chelsea was very independent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think a parent can do something so that they do not raise someone who's people pleasing, or do you think that's just something that's within?
I think it's a balance of both because I think I was someone who, from a young age, wanted to make other people happy. And so I think the positive reinforcement in doing workbooks or whatever it was to be obedient, I think kind of shaped and molded my personality because I really liked that praise.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so I think because I identified like with that praise, I would do everything that it took to continue getting that praise.
So as an adult, has that changed?
I think it had to, or else I wouldn't have known, or I wouldn't have just been my own person. I would have been a variation of people depending on who I was surrounded by. Because I think depending on a person's expectation, like if I was with you and I knew that doing something made you happy, then I would have chameleoned like into
Mm-hmm.
that. Or in a relationship or in a friendship or something, I think it's really, really important for a person to not fully depend on that satisfaction, I think, from receiving that praise. I think that was one thing that I really struggled with growing up. And being too dependent on that praise from you guys.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be happy if we weren't happy. So
Yeah.
recently I've been telling both girls if they did meet someone, not to marry someone just because we approved of the person, which I think is a very hard concept. Like if you fell in love with someone that we didn't approve of, would you have a hard time marrying that person, or would you need our approval?
I mean, I think at this age, I would know right from wrong, and I wouldn't blatantly choose someone that was, like, awful. I mean, I think...
But the need for approval, I'm saying. The need for parental approval.
Yeah. I mean, I trust myself so much to choose a partner that I don't think you guys wouldn't approve of, you know?
Yeah, and that's a healthy perspective.
I can't see myself at this age choosing a partner that you guys wouldn't approve of.
Because I'm pretty easy to please.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are like other parents where you guys might have more...
Like high standards or something.
Or not even high standards, you just, I think, look at more of the person's morals or their background, and just knowing that they're a trustworthy, you know, loyal companion that can stand, I don't know, the trials that
and someone that we know would make that you guys would be happy together. Like
yeah.
If someone doesn't make you happy, then obviously I don't think you'd be attracted to someone like that. But I think parents nowadays, like, you know what? Nope, not him. Yes, that person.
Well, I think that's what was, like, really nice about you and Dad, and that you never did that with me and Chelsea. You guys were very open and flexible and very accepting, I think, of the partners that we chose.
So what about with other areas of life, like career choices? Did we ever make you feel like, you know what, you really should?
No, I think you guys were also really flexible on that and really pushed us to do whatever it was that made us happy, whether it's career or school or anything. I think you guys really gave us the freedom to choose what made us happy. But I think, like, growing up with the perspective or, like, with the need to want to make you guys happy, I think that kind of morphed or had some negative
impact.
Yeah. On the decisions, even though you gave us that freedom,
the need to make us happy, or the need for parental approval. So is there anything that you think we could have done differently? I mean, we did the best we can.
Yeah, I agree. I think,
like, parents right now who have, say, a 12-year-old, is there any advice, like, for moms to say, you know what?
Yeah.
I think I would have gained more from parents who...
I think something that I've only recently realized probably in the past couple years is that, or how much a parent's personal trauma can very easily be passed down to their daughter or their son or anyone that they might be raising, whether it's a grandparent, you know, raising a grandchild or something like that. I don't know if parents or any guardians are aware that their children, like, idolize them growing up, and so I think, you know, your parents are where you learn how to love, how to trust, how to do everything. The very foundational, I think, steps of how to be a good human we learn them from you guys. And so I think if a parent still has, like, trauma that they haven't fully addressed or acknowledged, I think it can very easily be passed down to the child, whether it's a mistrust of the world or a negative perception or maybe a lack of self-worth or understanding how much they're worth. I think a child can, even at, like, as young as 4 or 5, I think they can very easily sense their parents' strengths and weaknesses without it verbally being communicated. And so I think if parents are really mindful in just, I don't know, being really conscious of whenever they're around their children, just making sure that, to the best of their ability, obviously everyone's human, but just being really mindful that children notice everything.
And, like, the judgments they subconsciously might pass on.
Yeah, definitely. I don't even think subconsciously. I think it's like, I think children learn how to judge from their parents, watching their parents, or they learn how to love from their parents. They learn everything from them. So I think if parents understand, like, the totality of, like, the impact and influence that they have on their children from a very young age, I think hopefully that would just inspire, I think, some mindfulness when it comes to parenting.
One particular thing that always, I think, is on both of our minds is when my dad was raised very, like, oh my gosh, you got to really be aware of you don't want to be a victim, the world is very scary. And so Sabrina had to ride her bike just in the perimeter of the garage. She never even asked, "Can I go on the road?" Because she wanted to make us happy. Well, my dad.
I never questioned it.
You never questioned it, so she literally just rode her bike around the carport area.
Mm-hmm.
So did that give you? Did you think that, you know what? No, I'm not even going to go out there because it's scary, or this is my parameter, so I'm not even going to question it.
I think, yeah, being a people pleaser, especially at the age of like 4 or 5 through like middle school, I think, I never questioned it. Because I was like, if obeying,
Mm-hmm.
like, gains their approval, or I think then I tied approval to self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So, you
just accepted it.
I accepted it, totally. I never questioned it.
But if you had a child who did question it, I'm thinking like saying that, the world is very scary. We cannot go past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that obviously is healthy. I think your child can sense your mistrust of the world, and I'm sure whether or not they verbalize like their curiosity behind that,
Mm-hmm.
they're still thinking that and wondering what it is about the world that they can trust. So I think that definitely lingers with a child.
When I raised you folks, unlike my childhood, I did not pop it in, tell me about angels and about protection. I know we
Mm-hmm.
talk about, remember now the angels will be there. You're going to be okay during the interview, or you're going to be fine
Yeah.
with this test. Do you think that instilling some kind of belief system when they're younger will provide, some sense of comfort?
Yeah, I think also leading the child to, I don't know, developing their own sense of a belief in a higher power, because
Mm-hmm.
like we saw how Chelsea was really influenced by
a strong Christian school.
Yeah, it's like I was in a Christian environment too, a children's house, but it was more non-denominational, so it was like I only learned through Jesus or about Jesus through like coloring books and stuff. It wasn't like really pounded into us. So I think that was more of like a gentle approach. Yeah, I knew that like God like
and then
existed.
you transitioned to a very strict Christian school.
And so I think children are still extremely impressionable at that age. I think I learned a lot about guilt and shame from that school. Like, so, I mean, we've talked about how we definitely look at that experience in a learning lesson type of way.
Yeah, it wasn't a curse thing. We think of it as a very enlightening, like, life lesson.
Yeah.
Not to judge ourselves, not to shame ourselves.
While it was a Christian environment, I think I really felt judged because it was like we didn't go to that church or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so I think I'm really appreciative for that lesson those years that I went there, because I think because it didn't resonate with me and I kind of felt like an outsider when it came to like the school and the teachers, I think it propelled me to kind of find a deeper meaning of what spirituality or God meant for me. Where I think...
Did it take time though?
Oh, totally, yeah.
You were so immersed in it
yeah.
for quite a few years.
Yeah, and I think like if parents... I think it's nice to raise your children with the idea or the belief that there is a higher power. I think that whatever term you want to use, whether it's God or source or whatever, I think children are still very impressionable. I think it's important and this isn't even like religion, but just another thing that I'm thinking of is like, I think it's really important for parents to teach their children to just trust themselves. I think
So like an inner faith, and just know that. Otherwise, do you think that you're constantly looking for an outside source for acceptance or for approval?
Yeah. Because then at my age, then you start looking for your worth in jobs or in relationships or in friends or anything externally. And I think that's when it can get really dangerous.
So is there a final tip, like what parents can do so that they raise children who have that faith or who don't feel judged? And I think you were just mentioning passing on belief systems that are judgmental, but just to be aware of communication that they have with their kids.
Maybe if they can take a step back and then maybe just have a moment to really reflect on how their parents impacted them, and maybe the trauma or the belief system that their parents were raised with and that they realized that they didn't really resonate that well with, and kind of identify, well, this is where I learned what to fear, or this is where I learned, and like the positive aspects of like where or how did I learn how to love, and then just I think, take accountability, then for themselves and realize just, okay, wait, well, what am I passing on to my children? Am I really, like, okay with maybe how I'm teaching them whatever it may be? So I think being, I don't know, humble enough, and I think it obviously
being vulnerable
hurts the
then?
ego. Yeah. It hurts the ego whenever we know that we're wrong, but I think at the expense of raising a child, without their parents' trauma patterns, I think is really beneficial for everyone. Because then it's like they're going to pass on whatever their parents taught them if they aren't aware enough. And so I think if we, ultimately want to make this a more peaceful place to live, I think it's going to start with the parent making sure that they're aware of what they're passing down to their children exactly.
Which includes like discipline and just be conscious of what message you're passing on to your children. Because sometimes it's like, you know what, you better do this or else. And it might seem harsh, but you're going to fail in life if you do not do this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
But just know that, do we trust more? Do we trust our children to make their own choices without fearing that they might make the wrong choice? I know a lot of moms are like, you know what, I don't want them to make mistakes. I don't want them to be in pain.
I think having conversations with them, though, I think sitting down with your child and being like, this might be kind of deep and this might get kind of vulnerable, but can you tell me, can you define self-worth, or can you explain to me like how I taught you how to love, or do you feel like you trust yourself, at age 12 or elementary school or high school? I think just even allowing the kids to just kind of reflect and take a step back and be like, oh, yeah, I do have my own thoughts. My thoughts aren't just my parents' thoughts,
Exactly. Because I think sometimes you don't even realize
You
as
don't.
a child, do I
Yeah.
have separate thoughts or are they my parents' thoughts?
It's like, elementary school students thinking they, should vote for a certain president just because their parents vote. It's
Right.
like, well, do you have your own beliefs, or do you actually resonate with what your parents are saying? I think having a conversation with your child at any age about their fears or about any, past trauma that they might have been through, and I think talking about it with their parent and being like, well, even if the child might be 12 or 13 and they say, well, I watched you and Dad do this when I was like 5, and this has actually stayed with me still.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a child release that and just have it be in the open,
In a safe environment without being judged.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that's the only way the child and the parent are going to experience that kind of growth together. And
so have you felt, just be honest, have you felt like unconditionally loved, or do you think sometimes we might subconsciously have
I always knew that you and Dad
loved you
unconditionally, yeah.
Despite what we said, despite the workbooks.
I think,
things.
obviously, I knew that was always done out of love and care, but, I don't think that was anything that I ever doubted I'm sure Chelsea feels the same way, but that was never anything I could say that I never
So
felt.
having different beliefs, 2 different parents, maybe different religious beliefs, different ways to parent, that it's still possible to raise someone who does have a strong faith in themselves, who is self-confident and just, okay with overcoming obstacles, that it is possible, or do they need to be on the same page?
I'm trying to remember because it's been so long, but I think I started really realizing that you and Dad had very different belief systems in middle school. I think
Regarding religious or regarding
regarding everything. I think you guys really disagreed on a lot. And so I think, I think for me it just, again, made me kind of take a step back and be like, it was really conflicting for a while because it was like I would learn something at school that was different, and then I would learn something from you that was different, and then I would learn something from Dad that was different, and so it was like
and the other grandma and papa, totally different.
They were pretty neutral when it came to everything, but I think it really propelled me to want to just understand what I believed in.
And to create and navigate your own path without needing to please.
So I had to drop the whole needing to please in order to figure out what I believed in.
And you're doing really good at that. and I tell both of them, do not do things just to please us. I know a lot of parents think, in order for me to be happy as a parent, my child needs to do this, this, and this. But I'm learning that I would rather you folks be happy
Yeah.
in your journey instead of doing what I think you should do. And as parents, do we really know what we're doing? We're navigating in this mystery of, especially the year of the pandemic. It's like, do you do this? Do you do that? And I think I'm becoming more vulnerable and saying, you know what? Because I remember one time we had this conversation, you're like, Mom, you're the parent. And I said, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. And being okay with that. So, any closing comments? Thank you so much for doing this. Took a while for me to convince her to do this. But thank you. And your closing words are?
Yeah, I think parents just should always just be mindful of how much their children just really idolize them. And so they're like your first superheroes, you know?
That's
so
true.
I think if they just take that and understand the responsibility that they have in raising someone to be loving and kind and open-minded, I think the next generation will really benefit from that.
And there you go, perspective of a 24-year-old, last day of 2020. Thank you, and I really appreciate you guys watching these videos, and please let me know if you have any questions about parenting.